Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to Infinite Playwrights Chat Room number 4. I'm Guy Sprung. I'm the Artistic Director of Infinite Theatre, and this afternoon we're talking to Marianne Ackerman about an early draft of her play Black Dog. We have up to almost 100 people who have requested copies of the script, so that's very exciting. I just want to repeat that this is meant to be a real exercise. That is, we, the chat room, and you, any suggestions that you may send in, are meant to stimulate, to give a creative urge and nudge to Marianne Ackerman to write the next draft. So, Marianne Ackerman, welcome, and thank you very much for doing this. Black Dog. I'll come back to you in a second and give you a more proper introduction. In the chat room this evening, we have, going around clockwise on my screen, I don't know whether that's on anybody else's screen, we have Michela De Cesare, a Montreal playwright, actress. Michela, this is your second time in the chat room. Thank you very much for doing this. I know as a playwright that you've been commissioned by the Centaur to write a play, so we may get you here in the hot seat soon with one of your drafts as well. Below is Severin Thompson, Toronto director. Severin, welcome. Thank you very much for doing this. It's been, I think, about 40 years since we last set eyes on each other. I was directing. I was directing a production of Blythe, the Blythe Festival, and Severin was actually in it.
It was actually my little sister. I didn't make it into the play.
You're okay. I thought at times you were okay. So it was Quiet in the Land, and it actually went on to win a Governor General's Award. Paul Van Dyck is stuck in California. Paul, we chatted up your play, King of Canada, as our first chat room, and thank you very much. Paul, of course, is actor, director, producer, and playwright. And then above you, at least on my screen, is Andrea Romaldi. Andrea, welcome. You're now running the Playwrights course division at the National Theatre School. So if the next generation of playwrights don't hit it out of the park, we can hold you responsible. And but you've also been the literary manager at the Tarragon, and thank you very, very much for taking the time to join us. And Marianne Ackerman. Marianne, Montreal playwright. Of course, you started as a journalist, and you got out of journalism to found a theater 1774, which is actually the birth mother, as it were, of Infinite Theatre, because it is the organization that Infinite Theatre became, or was born from. You're a novelist, short story writer. You are, of course, also a playwright, and congratulations, because Triplex Nervosa, the play that ran at the Centaur and was a great hit, has just been published by Guernica Publications. Can you flash can you show us?
Start off with publicity.
That's right. That's right.
There you go.
That's great. So Triplex and the play that was done at the Centaur, and then 2 sequels to it, are part of a trilogy that have just been published by Guernica. So congratulations on that. Marianne, can I ask you, because there will be people on Zoom, on Facebook, and on YouTube that have not read the script, can you give us, I hate to say the elevator pitch, but at least a précis.
Keep it short.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yes, it's a play. The central character is named Ariel. She's a 30-year-old critic, book critic. She works for a blog called Black Dog, and she's established this huge internet presence because she never likes any books. She's very mean and nasty and cutting on her comments. So anyway, she's the Black Dog star. One night, she's leaves the building, the loft, with on the street, meets this guy who's kind of a rundown guy, probably in a hoodie, And he accosts her and says, "You trashed my book, my first novel. You ruined my life. This is terrible." They fall immediately into an argument, but he's able to get her to go for a drink and talk about it. And during a long 5-hour session, which we don't see, they bond, and she finds some really interesting, and all these things happen over a chemistry moment. She takes him home in an Uber, lets him off into his house, walks him upstairs because he's pretty drunk, and he abandons her almost immediately to his brother, who's parking his Jaguar in the parking garage downstairs. And by the way, the loft is a spectacular penthouse with a great view of the city, and obviously not this failed novelist Dyck's. So the rest of the play is about this handover of the guy who got to her with his analysis of David Foster Wallace and all this, and then his obviously way more successful brother. So it plays back and forth between these two with an intrigue involving cyber terrorism and a lot of hijinks with Black Dog and their hits. And I don't know how much of the plot to give away, but it's kind of a thriller in a sense that we are always trying to figure out this thing between the two men.
Okay, so a female protagonist who is a blog writer. I'm just going to quote, I got here, we've already had some comments written in already. There is Elaine Greenberg, who actually was part of our very first chat room, wrote in, "This is a really interesting, mesmerizing, intelligent play that held my attention from start to finish." So that's Elaine. Another one, Bill Zajic, who's also a playwright, a Montreal playwright. "I found the piece fascinating, engaging, clever, cool, with it, and current." So that's a pretty high praise to start off with. So I'm just wondering if, let's just do a quick sort of opening statement from each of you. Michaela, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would agree with these write-in comments. I was also riveted, really engaged. I have to admit that Guy tantalized me by saying that there was a role in it that was perfect for me, and I don't know which one it was. So maybe it's one of the brothers. I don't know. But I did, so my actor ego kicked in, and I was reading for that and thinking how exciting any of these roles would be to play.
Okay, well, okay, that's fascinating, because I think maybe the central character we'll come back to and talk about her and you know the possibilities of that character. Paul, do you have any opening thoughts?
Oh yes, I enjoyed the play as well. I enjoyed the twists and turns. I thought I really enjoyed the main character and as well all of the sort of secondary characters. I whatever B plots that they had, like the boss and Cherry, like I don't know. I thought they all wove together very nicely. And as far as thrillers and twists and turns, I was riveted all the way through. I wanted to read on.
Okay. Andrea, do you have want to kick in here?
I think that there were a lot of interesting ideas in the play. Myself, I wasn't sure what the central unifying idea was. I think there were lots of opportunities and possibilities to explore different things. I think my major question is what is Ariel's fight? What is she fighting for? I don't really know the answer based on what I see in the play. So while I think that there's a lot of interesting possibilities, like I'm not sure if she's fighting for the role of the critic as an artist, as somebody who's essential to the arts, whether or not your criticism might drive someone to suicide. I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure if it's about the fact that what we see online we can't trust, and I wondered if that had to do with the filmic aspect of the play. So I think it raised a lot of interesting questions for me, but I think what I couldn't quite get to was what the central fight is for the characters. Like what is she going after?
Okay, I think we're going to probably want to return to the central character in a second. Severin, do you want to just chime in here with an opening kind of situation from your point of view?
Yeah, I enjoyed the read. I felt similarly that I was curious about what is driving our central character, and I wanted to hear more about that earlier in the play. She's a critic, which I find to be a fascinating occupation for our center hero, and I want to know why. What drives somebody who wants to be a critic, and so I'm curious about who she is at the beginning versus the end of the play, and what happens to her along the way. I was looking for more agency from her. It felt like she was being buffeted around by other people. And for somebody who has already created a name for herself at the beginning of the play, I wanted to see a bit more of that source of what's driving her and what people are already compelled by in her personality. And if she's a mean critic, I'd like to just see some of that, some of those punches that she doesn't pull early on. I thought that would be, it's a fascinating idea, and I just wanted to see a bit more of that in action, and then see what happens to somebody like that. And I'm curious about why she goes along with these situations that seem dangerous, that in the audience you'd be going, no, don't don't go for the drink, or but she does, and the fact that she does is interesting, and it kind of feeds into the film noir feel as well. And I don't know, a series like Jessica Jones, or somebody's a little self-destructive, that's compelling too, and I'm curious about it.
I agree with you. I think we want to get into or know the character a little bit more, so that when she does allow herself to be tied up and somebody's reading a novel to her, we can totally believe that character would do that exactly as you said. I'm sorry, this is going to sound like a session of pushing for a Guernica publication, but also in this week is a book that came out, which is a collection of essays about journalists, true confessions from the newsrooms past. It's called Fish Wrapped. It's actually a wonderful, brilliant book, and it has an essay in there by a former journalist by the name of Marianne Ackerman. And in this, Marianne Ackerman describes her life as a journalist and a single mom. And she describes the shenanigans and the constant slipping and sliding that she had to do in this male world in order to keep her and her daughter fed. And you can't help but admiring this journalist for how she, for the spunk that she had. And I kind of miss that in the central character. Is how much of it is you, do you think, the central character in your play?
A lot, but I know this agency is such an issue for me, female protagonists and agency. But for me, the dualism in characters, it's always the yin and the yang. So this dance that these two take, is Menlo / Gill, I feel, so for me, the Ariel's quest and the thrust of the play is the search for love. And she finds it, she bumps into it on the street in the most unlikely way, and is dragged to this bar and just feels that thing. And if somebody said, is she crazy, or is she just very instinctive? And I think there's an instinct happens, but it's just that they have this night, and then this awful thing happens where she's taken to his apartment. They go to his apartment, and then his brother comes in and she has sex with him, which I find just the most incredibly crazy, delicious thing to happen. Like, how could that happen? And her friends, which she's telling it to, says, was it good? And she says, it was fast. It's just this thing, like she sabotaged herself, in that first date. So the agency is an issue because she's trying to sort that out for the rest of the play.
Did anybody, Marianne has said she thinks the play is about what is love. Did anybody get that from the play?
No.
Well, in a broad sense, it's not a treatise on what is love. It's not, but that is this click moment happened. Yeah. And then, okay, spoiler alert, the man that she had the click with is dead.
Yeah.
And so for her in a thriller, her thing, and she's very clear, her stated objective throughout is to find out what happened to Menlo.
Yeah.
Where is he? I don't think he's dead. She bit by bit figures it out. So for her, we get it on the level of thriller. We don't get it on the level of girls talking about what's Mr. Right was. We don't get it about talking about love. We get her search for what happened to that man I met in a bar. And the one who resembles him, she's always trying to get over him. So get over that night. And what she finds in the end, this is my version, it's within the thriller mode. I'm working in a motif here of the thriller.
Yeah.
By the end, he becomes them both. So
right.
it's that level of love story. It's not a Hearts and Flowers.
Sorry, what is it? Sorry, Andrea, did you want to jump in?
No, you ask. Go ahead. You go ahead.
What is it about Menlo that she falls in love with? I mean, you have a scene where that happens. I don't understand what the attraction is. You know, you sort of, we have to take it as read as opposed to seeing it. Was that your deliberate intention then, to leave up?
For me? Are you asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was deliberate because I'm not going to talk about previous incarnations of the story, but what she does, why the character of Skip, her roommate, she tells Skip, they're sitting in the laundromat, she says, this happened to me last night. I met this guy and we just, you know, and she says very clearly, he defended his novel and he made me see everything I said about it was wrong. Well, this is a kind of, it's a big turn on for her because she's concerned about her own, or a very, very, you know, confident about her own opinions. And this is, for a confident person, this is the ultimate turn on. You meet a man who tells you you're all wrong and you believe him. Like wow, that's neat. That's really the conversation. And it's okay, we know it's 5 hours, maybe that's superficial, but by the time she left that bar and decided to Uber him home because he was falling down drunk and drop him off, she thought this was going to be the beginning of a beautiful relationship. And then, damn, it isn't. So, you know, it's...
Andrea?
I was going to say, I don't feel that in the play.
Yeah.
Right. I don't feel that. And then for her to have this 5-hour conversation with him where they click, and then for him to, for them to have a video where he's killing himself, and he actually does. No. That just, for me, the only way I could make sense of that was he's manipulating her to get back at her for the review. And he's not actually dead, right? So it became a story about manipulation and about, right, that's where my brain was going, was Menlo has seduced her, put her into this position because he wants a kind of payback for the critique, and because to get someone to fall in love with you in 5 hours and then abandon them and then broadcast a video where you're killing yourself over them is extremely manipulative to me.
Yeah, well,
right?
That's what we think when we're watching that, but that's not what happens in the play. In the end, it was Gil and Wally who made that video. And that was Gil's way, again, spoiler alert all over the planet, to get rid of the guy the guy who actually brought her to him, you know, and to get a full-on opportunity to try to get her on his own terms. So yeah, Gil Menlo is a very kinky guy. I admit that character is like, whoa, borderline psycho, but.
Okay. Just one quick note here, Marianne. I think we have to assume everybody's read the script in the sense that there's spoiler alert. Okay, we can't just be coy with the plot or anything like that. We're talking about the play here, so you have to.
So I can say.
I think from what I get from Andrea's comment is she's confused about the ending then, because it's not clear that in fact it's Gil who is a Menlo, right, and has set the whole thing up. That is not clear from what's on the page at the moment.
All right. Okay.
That is what I thought was the case, but the ending confused that for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Like in the beginning, my instinct was with the same person, and this is part of some elaborate ploy to manipulate her. That's how that was my intuition, you know, just as reading the play. And then at the end, I kind of went, still not sure if Menlo is real or not, because there is a mention somewhere in a stage direction of a photograph of the two brothers. So that, for me, I kind of went, well then, unless this is a really elaborate staging where somebody has staged that photograph, at which point I go, it's not about love, right?
Yeah.
So
No, it's
all those clues tell me that it's not, for me, it's not about love. It's about setup and manipulation. I mean, that's just what I'm getting.
Can I ask?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, Menlo and Gil are the same person, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. That's what I assumed. I just wanted to be.
Anybody else confused by that? Because I know from the comments that have already come in that in fact there are a number of the readers were confused exactly what the ending is.
Good point. Yeah.
So
yeah, I know that reading over the draft to get ready for this talk again. Yes, I realized I had done, since Guy read the first one and this draft, I had done like quite a major work on the ending, and I think I brought the play down, or the plane down to it's skidded. It has to be absolutely clear that in collaboration with Wally, who's another character we need to talk, the webmaster, the triple agent, in collaboration with Wally, whom he hired from Craigslist, he had created videos and a video life of this character Menlo, his alter ego, the quote unquote writer. And so this, which I think maybe the video from Menlo when he's doing his kiss off is maybe a bit too brutal. But Gil decides to definitively early on put an end to Menlo and to go for her himself. And he's also at a point in his creativity where he does not want this guy getting the bad reviews. You know, he's growing as a writer and he's about to come out of the closet as a novelist. So, you know.
So did he invent the Menlo character because he did want to get back at her, at Ariel, for the bad review? Is that what it is? And he invented Menlo as the writer, as a pseudonym, so that
Yes, he says that. He says nobody, you know, he's got clients. He's a high-placed financial advisor. So the extrovert reason why creating him was that you can't be a novelist. Nobody's going to buy the novel of some, you know, high finance guy. He needed it's me being mocking the world of literature, but he needed the kind of down and out, you know, the deep suffering guy who doesn't have much money coming from nowhere. He says the trajectory of great novelists is all from, you know, obscurity to a bestseller type thing. So, but also when he writes from this persona, this kind of guy, like David Foster Wallace was very much a dark character, and he writes from this alter ego thing. But as time goes on, you know, Menlo, Gil brought out their first novel. It got some pretty bad reviews, but so that's where he's at this turning point, you know, where he's going to drop the alter ego. But when he meets this critic who said everything to him, I mean, don't forget, Gil was the man in the bar. They talked literature all night. She took him as the dark, you know, basement writer type thing. They connected. And he was able, it's his search for a muse. He was able to say everything about his writing and his novel, get into conversation with her. And that's where he fell for her too. Like, this is what I need in my life, this muse. I need to be with her.
Any other comments about the central character, observations, suggestions from anybody? Because I think too that should be looked at, that whole trajectory of who she is, where she's coming from, and why she is a critic on its own. Like, to me, the strongest central character point for Ariel is when she's on the panel and you know, talking to the artists, and she comes out with what is in essence her, you know, her personal mandate about criticism.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think you know that criticism is like journalism is you know, should be valued with the same value as we value artists and businessmen, you know, business people. So that gave a strength to the character that I kind of kept wondering and looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just on that, I wanted to see that earlier when you said she's extremely confident. I'm not seeing that off the top. Besides what they say about her, just from her, I would love to see a little more of that. And I won't be so worried about her also with with Menlo and with anybody, you know what I mean? I see a little more of who she is as this.
Yeah, she should be able to deal with the boss character, you know, really easily. Do you know what I mean? She should, yeah, we should see that she's in control of the world she lives in. And but by the way, I find the setup of that counterculture blog, the Black Dog blog, I don't find it counterculture enough. You know, if you have somebody called the boss, you already feel like, oh, they're already mainstream, they're too big. You know?
Yeah.
And again, if it were counterculture, if it were in opposition to the universe, that would give her strength as well. You know, if the blog,
I mean, we're supposed to think that she is the best part of it. She's the one getting the clicks and that. It's her nasty reviews of literature that is really all they've got going for them. Because he says, like, they're all working at call centers. You know, everybody's part-time job is something else. And he's got this dangling girlfriend. So they're not making any money. They're just sort of getting a bit of traction and stuff.
Paul, yes.
I wondered about how Ariel could have such weight on these critics. I mean, she's sort of set up as somebody who's almost like a famous critic. And I mean, somebody writing for a blog that's not making any money is not going to have that kind of an impact on a writer on the success of their book, much less to prompt them to commit suicide over a blog critique. So I kept wondering why is she in a position of such sort of power when she's getting an allowance from her father to be able to pay her rent in like a slum apartment or something? So I kept kind of, it reminded me, did you see the film Game 6 years ago with Michael Keaton? He's a playwright, and it's just a film about the power of a critic. And I think it's Robert Downey Jr. who plays this ominous critic, and he meets another playwright whose career has been just decimated from this review. And Michael Keaton has a play coming out, and he's terrified of this critic. And the critic is so notorious that he has to go in disguise whenever he goes to see plays. So he even dresses as a woman, and so no one knows it's him. And that kind of, I imagine this is the power that this, but he's ready for something like the New York Times, or it's something that actually does hold weight over a person's livelihood. A blog that is not making any money. And
well, no, at the beginning, okay, they're clinging to the edge with their clicks and stuff. At the beginning, they're not making any money.
So why does Menlo care about her review?
Because he's seen it in print, and he, you know, when that whole thing at the beginning is not a situation of great power. He's just read something. He's written a novel that went nowhere. It had 1 or 2 blogs commented. He's tracked down the woman, the bloggist, who said something interesting, although badly, very negative about his novel. The novel was not a success. The blog is not a big, powerful thing. It's only when Menlo puts up that video and kills himself over a critic, everybody writes about it, and other blogs pick it up. Ariel's power, and she doesn't even get on she only gets on the Armory panel. The fame, it's the Menlo's topping himself over a bad review is what goes viral and makes Black Dog suddenly things people are talking about. Before that, it was nothing. It was like Rover. It was just really a thing, you know? Yeah. So it's what he does and she's so traumatized by all this that she lets Cherry write the reviews and the stuff and that, but the boss is able to interest investors and make this into something. So the Black Dog becomes a significant talked about force because of this weird incident, which is why it has to be really like they're looking at clicks, and the boss is saying, shit, we're going to clicks, they're going crazy, you know, and everybody knows about it. So they're able to puff that into an investor.
Okay, I think we understand where you're coming from and what's in the script there, but it does seem a contradiction that the critic has such power and is known, and you know, on a blog site that nobody's watching.
What power does she have, though? I mean,
yeah.
At the beginning, I'm noting that down. Yeah.
I think it's okay. Sorry.
Go for it.
I was just going to say, I think I share some of Paul's confusion in that we're told early on, even before Black Dog becomes really successful, that she's a that she's a force as a reviewer. And I think that's what I find confusing, is that if she were a known force, that would already be drawing traffic to the blog, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I find the disconnect.
And that it seems that she already has a reputation for this nastiness, which is something that I wanted to pick up on. It's just, it seems like there's this mythology built around her for how nasty she is, and we never really see that or see it mediated through her. And I was kind of wondering what her relationship is to that, to this persona. Is there a dissonance with who she actually is, and is that why we kind of see a meeker version of her in her interactions with people? But then, so who is that persona, and what what weight does it have?
Because she does seem to, the indication is that she is a bit of a public persona. I mean, when she goes to that panel to talk about art and critics, right? She's known, and she's up there with well-known artists as their equals. So she's a rep around town.
By then, she's very known, but she's only known. It's only the Menlo video that goes viral and gets her big fame in the town. Otherwise, she's known by the few people who read, these book blogs and stuff. She's very, I mean, that has to be clarified. Obviously, that has to be clarified. The boss is always whining about it, that they started out as a co-op. They're all working for nothing, and you're the only one they're reading. But these small potatoes, it's like very minor until this incident happens.
Right.
I think another question I have is, if she is small potato and a writer blames his suicide on her, there would be a lot of people who'd be ostracizing her as well, I think.
Absolutely.
So I think there's
That's why she goes into hiding. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. That's why she lets Cherry do it.
What was your question, Andrea? What was it?
Well, I think that we get indications later in the play, about 2/3 in, of the negative blowback, but we don't get it immediately. Like we don't understand. I don't feel that I understood at the moment of it happening that she was experiencing this negative blowback, and I was wondering where it was, and it comes later in the play. Yeah. So I think there's a whole bunch of, I'm trying to remember the panel scene where she talks about the power of a critic, but what I wonder is that's not balanced against the potential negative power of a critic, where where people could hold her actually accountable for somebody's death, right? Like
that's why she goes to the armory thing. The boss is trying to get rid of her. The boss, she won't go to work because she's traumatized by having the thought that she did this thing. She's staying at home under the covers, and it's only the boss is saying, look, he gets Cherry to fill in and write stuff, but it's clearly not Ariel's style of writing. And finally the boss says, look, that's over. I'm giving sans serif to Cherry. Cherry's going to do this, and she's going to the armory to talk about critics, and she's going to be you. They have that scene, and you have to be graceful. You're not doing your job. I'm giving it to her. It's over for you. And that's where she says, okay, I'll do it. I'll go to the armory. So she goes to defend her position. That's the first time she's even touched her old column since Menlo's death. She goes, and that's where she says, this is what I feel as a critic. She comes out. Regardless of who dies, I have to say what I have to say. That's it. And then she gets hit, they come up at the end and say, but you got a guy killed, it erupts again. And she has to take it.
Explain to me, Marianne, exactly the ending. What does happen? So we have them going off in a blue jag into the sunset, as it were. How did we get there?
Okay, so what really the ending of the play is it's scene 23 before. So there's a change when Ariel is on this quest to find out what about Menlo. How did that happen? And finally she figures out it's going to be Gil. But Skip won't let her go to Gil. He's too dangerous. He's psychotic. You can't go to him. You've got to make him come to you. So she posts that video where she melts down. Yeah. And says, and Gil falls for it. I love this part. Gil falls for it and says, I have to save you from, he rushes to her house to try to get in. Skip tells him, piss off. She's not interested in you. Go away. The boss then comes to the door and tells them the big shit, which is that the whole Black Dog site has crashed. It's gone down. Now, that's where the Wally character, I completely agree, needs to be set up. Wally, the basement web nerd. This is the key person for Black Dog. He holds the keys because he's the one who made so he was working, triple agent, I say. He was working for Black Dog, supposedly doing everything for them and keeping it going and all that stuff. Then he got a job with Menlo or with Gill to make this silly video. And it's when the video, that's when the two things, he saw his chance. So then he starts working for both sides. And then at this point in time, just before so he decides to take the site down and ask for a ransom from this mysterious hacker. So he's a triple agent, he's working for himself. They discover his horrible basement, and that's where they discover all the bits of videos of Gil.
And
oh my God.
Sorry, and all of this brings Gil and Ariel together in the end. Is that
I don't know how together they are. So okay, maybe you want more scenes, but they figure that all out. So then there's a lapses, yes, of time passes. Time passes, Gil finishes the novel, it gets published. Ariel and the Black Dog come up with this new thing, which you remember in the early draft, maybe you don't. There was a whole scene where they invent art ambush. Ariel decides to get a new concept where she will just go to artists like she did in the bar. She will confront artists and talk to them about their work and get them to tell, just like this is happening to me right now. Well, the artist will be on trial and we'll have to explain. It'll be a conversation and people will watch that. I invented that.
All right, please tell us what the play is about. No.
No, but I mean, that's what Ariel wants to do, is she wants to do what she did in that bar, which is to press artists to talk and clarify their intentions and get into that discussion. And that's what people want to see. They don't want to see 4 stars or 3 stars. They want to be let into the creative world, into the creative thing. So
let me jump in there, because you mentioned Wally, the intrepid whiz with the internet and so on. We haven't touched on this yet, but it's actually one of the exciting features of the play is that it is a hybrid of some sort between movie, TV, and live theater. And what you, in the stage directions, you described that it's basically a bare stage with a screen, and all the scenes are set with a video, and we actually see some of the action on video and so on. So I'm just throwing it out here to the chat room. Do we think that can work? Is that a good idea? It's not brand new in any way. It certainly feels right for the material, since the material is so much about blogs and the internet, that there would be some mixed media, as it were, a component. As a director, say, Severin, can you envision this being something that you could try and make work?
Sure, yeah. I think there's a lot of potential in working with media. It made me curious about how much does she's 30, does it take place right now? Like in today's, right? Yeah, so a 30-year-old now can just is so comfortable with making films. And so I was curious about, does she ever add to her blog? It seems like she doesn't want to show herself, that she has an aversion to that, but does she add little videos? I wondered if she might film Gil at some point, or trying to work out this mystery, what she herself records before the art ambush. I love this art ambush, though. I'd love to hear about that ahead of time too, give me more of a sense of who she is.
What's the great character, Margaret Delahunty, right? Who does that? Yeah, right. Okay.
But I just wanted to add one thing, though, that to incorporate, what I would also want to do is incorporate written text, projected text as well, since that's what she reviews, is the written word. And her name is Sans-Serif, so to see some of that projected as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And anybody else in terms of the mixed media? Paul, also as a director, can you see it working?
Yeah, I kept imagining it. I think the first sort of stage directions were, can this take place in an actual cinema, which sounded interesting. However, I mean, having worked with a lot of multimedia and theater, you always have to be prepared to that it's going to dwarf your actors. Like, there's no competition with 5,000 lumens of light flashing behind an actor. It's that. So that the idea of bringing that hugeness to a theatrical experience is very it's interesting. It's a fun kind of problem to play around with, but it's a challenge for sure. I wonder why this is a play and not a movie. Like, it seemed like it would be a really fun kind of incendo movie of the week type of thing. You've got all the elements of something that could. It's just catering to the film noir. The scenes are so cinematic. Like, they're just, we're going to only show you they're very short, as opposed to theatrical scenes, which are usually much longer. And I found in cinema, you've got a person's face doing all the dialogue for you. You don't have to have a lot of dialogue. We just look at someone's eyebrows go up, and that's all we need. And so I was just kept wondering, this would make a great film. This would make a very challenging play throughout as I was reading it.
I just want to once again just to make clear that what we have read, what we put online, is a first draft. It's basically Marianne laying out her territory. We're here dissecting. It's very easy to do, Marianne. I'm sorry if it feels like we're digging a little bit too deep, but the whole point is that this is just an early draft, and you've laid out something extremely ambitious, a film noir play that integrates video and so on. I really like Severin's suggestion, by the way, that go further, but go less video, less movie, and go further into smartphone and Twitter and whatever into that thing and integrate it a little bit more, so maybe we can understand that, the love for Menlo through a couple of tweets that she sends to Skip or something. You get more into the material because it is a reflection of what you're writing about, so I don't think it's a dishonest thing. I don't think it's just a ploy. I think it's integral to what you're talking about.
I really, really like the idea of text, bits of text. I mean, I was very much influenced while writing this. A certain phase, Infamy was using a lot of film and text in shows. I would see them go up and I would think, whoa, this could, be pushed further. But one of the little funny parts, I'll tell you how much I'm very attached to this as a play, and I'm also very attached to text. I think Ariel starts in a book world, in a text-based world. And by the way, all the characters' names, if you look them up, are fonts. When I sat down to write it, and I'm thinking of these characters, I always like to, when I write something new, I'm starting new, I like to get a font because it's kind of like the voice of the thing. What font am I going to use? Of course, you have to go back to Times Roman at the end. Everybody wants that. But I started looking up nice fonts and even looking at free fonts and wasting time. Ariel, Sans-Serif, Courbet, Harrington, Menlo, Gill, look it up, they're fonts. So the text is, to me, I think it's a play because I just think it would be so exciting if an audience went in and they start looking and think, oh, it's going to be a movie. It's a film. No, it's not. That realness, that when they step out and have a conversation, I agree from a director point of view, how to downscale and take us to the intimacy of acting. But my favorite films have that kind of, flesh and blood acting in them. And, the tie-up scene, that's very theater.
Okay, but there's a danger here too, I think, and maybe Andrea, you can come in on this, because film and stage have different structural and time zone laws, right? So is there a danger in trying to mix, short scenes of film onto a stage? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like it's almost like in going hybrid, you then have to come up, you're putting chalk and cheese together and they don't necessarily fit. Because a film can do say something with one frame, 2 frames, bang, and you're out. But a play, usually you sit there and you get to know the characters a bit more. Is there a danger in mixing the media? We don't know what we're watching, or we don't know how to take it. We don't know how to feel it. I'm over to the Andrea, over to you.
Asking me?
Yeah.
My feeling is that the theater has this unique power to absorb and employ other art forms in a way that I'm not sure other art forms can do, and still retain its theatricality. I think for me, the question of the film is what is it doing? So right now in the text, it's acting as exposition and it's acting as scenery and set. And because of what your play is about, particularly your questions about this Wally character who's a triple agent who's making all these videos, and I think I alluded to this before, but so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but what is the story of the film and how is it a counterpoint or a contrast to the story of the live action? My intuition, because for me this still feels like a play about manipulation, even if they do fall in love, there's a lot of manipulating happening.
Yeah.
All these videos turn out to be false. They're false narratives. They're I don't know whether you would call them deep fakes or alternative facts, or so what I think for me is the story of the film has to be about how we perceive reality versus what it actually is.
Yeah.
And that story is driven by the story of their relationship. I mean, that's my sense from a structural perspective. If you use the play itself as the sort of the vessel, the way the filmic element would work to me is as a counterpoint, a counterpoint to the truth or to the fact, like what is reality and how do we perceive it and how are we taken in by what we see on a screen?
Yeah.
What kind of authority do we give it? What's missing from the frame? What's missing from the the time? How long the scene is? What's before and after?
Yeah.
I think that for me, if I were working with you on this play, those would be the questions I'd be asking. Whether they serve your vision or not, or I don't know, but that's where I would go.
I think that's you've hit on. I totally agree with what you're saying, Nadja. Thank you. That's really very astute. I'm going to throw it back over to the other writer in the chat room here, Michaela. Do you feel there's any is there an innate kind of conflict between the rhythms of film and the rhythms of theater, and can you put them together on the stage?
I was muted. I'm back. Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was reading, and as you know, Guy, I tried that out in Extra Beautiful You.
Indeed, you did. Yes.
And reading after reading and getting to later stages with it, it was almost like you couldn't know until you actually tried a workshop that incorporated some of those elements. But I think, not to compare the two, but what was happening in my script was that there were still moments that were decidedly theatrical, like long monologues or longer scenes. And here, I guess it's already been said, but I did have that feeling as everything was clipping along really quickly, that I almost, as I was reading, was starting to imagine everything as a film. And so I don't know what that means, and I'm not a director, but there was definitely something about the pace and the length of the scenes that I felt lent themselves more to being filmic.
I would hope that you don't give up in trying to convert it into a play with filmic or television elements to it, because I just go down to what Severin says. I think it's such an integral part of the material itself, and I think Andrea's put her finger exactly on what I agree could be the central issue of of it. I mean, I have used film in different ways. In a play called Death and Taxes that I wrote, it was about the corruption in the Brian Mulroney era. But the scenes were, they were just locations. You were in a restaurant, you had a video of a restaurant. You were in somebody's home, you had a video as a backdrop of that. And it did save on building sets and so on. It seems to me you have the possibility of something much further. By the way, I didn't really want to mention my own work there. I just wanted to get Brian Mulroney and corruption in the same sentence. So I think your play it's integrated in a way that could be quite fascinating, actually, Marianne. If you pursue that and look at it, but you can't get away with quick turns. At the end, the whole ending happens so quickly.
I know the ending. Yeah. The thing about it is that what I see, and I really take on board what you said about the relationships and the love. I want to think of it as it's a relationship story, whether it's actually love. But both Gil, let's say, and Ariel. The big question is identity and masks. They're posing. She's using a pseudonym to write book reviews under. It's a search for identity, and it's got to be seen as very slippery, because yes, we're living in this world of false news where you don't know what to believe anymore. So everything, you know, the old Aristotelian thing, reversal and revelation, I always try to keep reversing and then revealing. They bring themselves to that last scene. And I know that was just a movie in my mind, but I had this idea of them sitting in this crowd of friends and art ambushes. And if at first it's a, you know, they're doing a part of the show, but then that all disappears. And they're sitting alone with two glasses. And
But if it's you know, fiction, identity, masks, and then reality, I mean, those smartphones, man, we're coming up against reality. You know, that video of the murder of George Floyd has totally, thank God, brought the racism to the forefront of our society.
Exactly.
So there, you know, there's no essence. We don't get a sense of the power of that, of the reality that could be. You know.
Really?
Yeah. Not from the use of video. No. Because it's all fake.
Videos you've got, they turn the play turns of the 3-act structure. It turns on a video. The death of Menlo, the mother sobbing,
and both of which are not real.
They're manufactured.
Yeah.
Completely.
I have a question just concerning the plot. This building that is burnt down with 5 tenants in intensive care, did this happen, or is that fake?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Thank you.
Because that was constantly on my mind. Like, why are we caring about Menlo if there's 5 people in an intensive care? Why are we turning him into a hero if he'd blown up a building, you know?
Yeah, okay, I saw that flaw go by. I thought I could get away with it. It's some kind of catastrophe that he attaches himself to, but that's not very well worked out at all. I know it.
So it really happened. That is a real event.
It was, but that's a stupid idea. Okay, admittedly, it's not a good event. But I mean, I wanted something that would get the public to look at it, and then this video comes. So journalists are talking about it, and then a video comes out with the guy. It's like a suicide bomber who claims he did it, but he didn't do it. That's why the police don't follow up. It has nothing to do with Menlo, but he releases his video at that point and said, "You see what I did, you know, and it's me, and he's like a suicide bomber taking credit for something he didn't do."
But I felt hard to believe that police wouldn't follow up on it if people were injured, even if they're pretty sure it wasn't true. Their public press would say, "Have you looked into this? Who is this?"
That's what came out later. That was the big world story. And later, when Ariel goes and researches, actually, the cops that came to interview her weren't cops; they were actors. Yeah. There was nothing there. The police didn't follow it up because they knew what they found was the cause of the building burning down. They were on the case and they solved it within their own realm. And this video that was don't forget, in the art world, this is like in Greenwich Village somewhere. People are all getting steamed up about a novelist. You know, there's the big clicks, and then there's bigger than Black Dog ever had, and the Armory and people who pay attention. It starts a whole conversation. So that's a bit of a fine point.
Is there any value in your mind then to this blog journal? Does it have any integrity? The Black Dog, is it trying to change the world? Is it trying to bring truth to light? Is it trying to do anything, or is it just
trying to do what Rover tried to do? It's trying to take art seriously and get people like Ariel to read novels and books and talk about them in a trenchant way, but will get the public excited about novels and film and, you know, the culture that's happening within that community. So, I mean, they're the boss, and, you know, he's got a certain amount of integrity, and I had a lot of integrity with Rover. I did it for 8 years. It's ridiculous, but, you know, how to get clicks, we know, and that's what's brought down the world and brought down certainly the newspaper industry, chasing clicks. It's all there. I mean, fish wrapped, it's all in that. So it was only, and the boss sold out, he realized he had to up the ante and have stuff happening you know, and secondly, I think his selling out to these two and getting investors, that's a typical sellout. Does he believe this arts blog can ever be as big as it? He's trying to sell and get the investment at the very moment when it's worth something.
Yeah.
So it's a critique, really, and that's why Ariel goes to Art Ambushed and with Jerry.
But the point, I think, is that I was trying to make them, Marianne, is that at the beginning we don't get any sense of what the blog is, what Black Dog is before it sells out.
Yeah.
It starts talking about clicks in the very first scene, and
Yeah.
as if there's no integrity there, right?
No, there's integrity. You just don't have the clicks.
Okay.
Ober had tons of integrity.
Integrity with clicks.
That's the key. That's
All right. Anybody on the film noir, the structure of this? Any other final comments, questions, suggestions, Andrea?
I had one more comment which may be helpful, which is that the film, to me, especially if it is like Severin suggests, more like self-made film, videos made on a phone, is this idea of that online curation of our personalities and who we are and what we do. And I think that certainly Ariel is doing that, Gil is doing that. And to your point, Guy, about the video, the cell phone video of George Floyd's death, I read an interesting article, I can't remember where now, unfortunately. I think it was The Atlantic.
Murder.
Talking about...
Yeah.
Sorry?
Murder, let's call it what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what did I... Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, murder. Was that in this person's, from this person's perspective, there have been videos like this that have emerged, and in other cases as well, where people, far from being shamed by the video, perform for it. So even though they're being caught doing something heinous, there's kind of a performative aspect. So this is kind of awful. So I think there was a time that, you know, we still think that these videos are real and that they're going to kind of how do I say this? That they capture the truth, but what sometimes also happens is when people are being filmed, they then begin to perform. So I think there's this whole question around performativity as well, and how people knowingly perform for the video. Am I making sense, Guy?
That is okay. A fabulous comment. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. That we've got to be on guard everywhere for that, and a camera turns us on. You know.
Yeah, even when it should shame us sometimes, or it should, you know, act as a corrective. Sometimes people don't respond that way. So.
But I will admit that I agree with all of you that say that those who criticize the love affair and all that, that I'm not sure any of these.
Marianne, it's just the first draft where you just plowed the field. You haven't, you know what I mean? The garden is going to grow still, you know. So it's great. I mean, what you've got is a hugely ambitious story with all sorts of potential ramifications, and you've heard, you know, some of the possibilities of where you could take it, and it's a, you know, for an early draft, for a first draft, you've challenged yourself and us. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you so much for all your comments. Very, very useful.
We have been talking to Marianne Ackerman about the first draft of her play Black Dog, and thank you all very, very much for joining us. Next week it is David Sherman's play Nikki's Cafe for our last Playwrights chat room in this series. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Andrea, Michaela, Paul, Severin, and Marianne.
Thank you, Guy.
All right. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we blow the mute and now go out. Thank you very much.